You know emeralds and rubies and sapphires and pearls, but do you recall the most obscure Mox of them all? Of course you don't. That's why it's the most obscure one. Also, enjoy having Christmas music stuck in your head, sucker! Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. Today, we are going to talk about the sixth Mox, the unknown Mox. Everybody, or at least most people, know about the old school Moxes from antiquity, the 5 first Moxes. You know, one based on each of the 5 different colors, with the very interesting old school artwork that they're not all tied together really, aside from the fact that they're pendants, necklaces, right? You've got the emerald, which has the crazy little face on it, and the sapphire has more of a crazy ornate design to it, and then the other Moxes are a little less showy, right? So we had those 5 as the original 5, and for those of you who don't know, there is actually a point in Magic history where they tie into the storyline as well. There was a planeswalker named Liana who actually owned these Moxes. These Moxes weren't something that there would be a ton of around. Actually, had Moxes been printed after the Legend set, they clearly would be legendary cards. And in the story, they are legendary as well. Funnily enough, 3 of them are used to create something called the Mox Beacon, which was part of the Planeswalkers War, which is something we will never, ever get to talk about in full because the storyline was discontinued with the comics. But that's just a little side note. So, what about this obscure Mox? Well, let's talk about it. It's called the Mox Crystal. Just like the other Moxes, it costs 0 to put out. This one taps for a colorless mana. So obviously, it's decidedly more weak than any of the other 5 standard Moxes. But it does obviously give you mana acceleration and still would be too strong to print as a card. They would never print this now. So now this is an interesting one because the Mox Crystal is not technically an authentic Magic card, but because of the nature of its creation, it has its own authenticity. These cards are worth a considerable amount of money, and there are very few Mox Crystals in the world. And old school players like me, old school collectors, people who like the misprints, the rarities, all that stuff, they prize these cards. So, in the strictest sense, these are not Magic cards produced by Wizards of the Coast. For those of you who checked out yesterday's video where I was talking about the prismatic and 5 color formats, that's where the Mox Crystal comes from. It was created as a prize for these events from the 5. They're basically the 5 color promos, but they had like qualifiers, invitational, worlds for these events, and people involved with them were like high-ranking individuals, like level 3 DCI judges and stuff, like John Carter. And so there's because this was treated the way it was, there's a limited number of these. It's a real part of Magic history. These things are essentially real to those of us who are old school. Yeah, you can't play it in an officially sanctioned old school Magic tournament, but you're never going to run into that situation, right? Cubes and all this stuff. And I mean, you could make your own copy just like you could counterfeit any card, but it's just like other Magic cards. Everybody wants the real deal, and they're very limited in nature. So how they were created was basically it was a prize where the invitational winner, somebody who won the 5 color invitational, Mark Gressbach, I believe is the name. He's the person who designed the card. I might be mistaken. He might not be the one who designed the card. That might just be the name of the individual who posted the information. But anyways, the original version of Crystal Mox was supposed to be Jeweled Mox with a casting cost of 0. Add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. Tapping this artifact can be played as an interrupt. Now, this is obviously old school wording for those of you guys who don't know. Interrupt is an old card type from the game that's been completely removed. It's something that used to work faster than instant speed. It had to be done at interrupt speed because under the old rules, if it didn't have the interrupt wording, you wouldn't be able to tap it for mana to use it to cast in response to things. So that's just old school wording you don't really need to be terribly concerned about. Now, there was other versions that were suggested. The Crystalline Mox 0 cost when this comes into play. Destroy any other copies of this that are out, and add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. So that was a variation where instead of being legendary, it would just have a destroy effect, so you could still play 4, but you can only ever have 1 out. And then they basically went on and they talked about a couple of different problems with it. Basically, the name was an issue. Okay, so it was, I guess it was the name of, sorry, the individual who created the Mox was named Pat. Looking at this here, it looks like it was Pat. So, the card's great, but it doesn't make any grammatical sense. Jeweled Mox. Aren't the Moxen called Mox X for a reason? How can something jeweled tapped for colorless? So there were flavor issues with this. Wouldn't the word jeweled suggest color? Just because there's a jeweled bird doesn't mean a jeweled Mox sounds good, because jeweled bird was a card that was used a lot in the format. Call it Mox something, with the something referring to the colorless mana, please, in the spirit of all the great Moxen of the past. I love how much people care about this stuff and the flavor, because I'm the same way. I like it when things make sense, and you guys can see that when I break down art. So, he makes suggestions. Mox Glass, Mox Box, Mox Rock, Mox Crystal, Mox Gem, Mox Jewel, Mox Soul, Mox Satire, and then other ones that are like more jokes. But as you can see, Mox Crystal was nestled in there, and that became the actual official name. Now, there are 3 variations of the Mox Crystal. There's the first generation, which has the glossiest finish, and it's a sticker that's affixed over the entirety of the front of the card. The second generation looks like lower quality and also had the borders removed, so it fits within the borders of a Magic card. And the third generation of these are foils, although I suppose you could say there's five different variations, it appears like, because you have the first generation, the second generation, you have the 10 foils that were created as top 8 prizes that were given away. There was the test foil that was used to create those top 8 ones, and then there was an additional one, and that additional one ended up in the hands of the creator of the Mox Crystals. Now, he specifically says he has a reverse printed foil Mox Crystal for his own deck. So there's the light printed version that was used as the test print that ended up with John Carter. There are the 8 top player, what was the event here? Let's see here. It was for the top 8 at, okay, it was for the top 8 of the Worlds of 2004. So the top 8 of those got these the foil versions of these Mox Crystal. Now, even back in the day, because this is like 2003, 2004, 2005 time. Even then, when these things were fresh, people were willing to pay upwards of $100 just to get their hands on a copy of the Mox Crystal. And there's some pictures floating around. There's one that's actually it's been signed by John Carter. It says given by John Carter to Mark G after the top 8 draft. And then you can see he has a very interesting way of signing the cards. He dates them on one side, John Carter on the top, then he puts where he was and the location. And I know that that's consistent because look what I happen to have here, guys. I happen to have an Exalted Angel that was signed by him in the exact same fashion. So, these Crystal Moxes are a very, very cool, very interesting part of Magic history. Now, if we take a look at the artwork on it, it fits half decently in with the other Moxes, in all honesty. I mean, I enjoy the fact it does kind of, the crystal can be translucent and colorless, but also could easily, somebody could think that's like a white mana producer. So there is that issue, but I don't know how you would really get around that, because no matter what color you make the crystal, it's going to have some kind of color hue that probably, like, you could make it more crystalline, but then it might look blue. So I like the little dragon nesting on top. It's a fun card. There's a lot of effort put into making sure that they got the right flavor behind it, and I enjoyed it. And also, it's interesting to note that originally this was supposed to show up as a genuine Magic card. They were originally going to do a Mox Crystal, and it was going to be a colorless producer, and it was going to come out in Mirage, but they decided to scrap it, and they repurposed the art. Now, take a look at all the art of the Moxes. We'll quickly go through the original 5 Moxes. Take a look at the old school artwork with the crazy wavy patterns in the background, the nice saturated artwork with the Moxes front and center. Take a look at Mox Crystal with its own interesting Soul Ring-esque background, and the dragon and the Mox front and center. Now, I'm going to show you what would have been the Mox Crystal artwork in Mirage. And let's all have a good laugh, guys. Here it is! And they repurposed it for Enlightened Tutor. First of all, that's the Mox. she's holding it on like a stick. Secondly, what is going on with their face? Look at her. Grrr. And she's got that little banded kind of weird helm thing going on that has are those supposed to be the other 5 Moxes representing them? It's just, she looks ridiculous. She looks like somebody's crazy old grandmother, and this is her like, this is the sex toys we used 100 years ago in the magic world, and this is how I looked when I used it. So yeah, guys, I gotta say, sometimes the inauthentic magic cards are actually going to be better, and this is one of the few that has transcended the bounds of like fandom and become a real part of magic history. These things are real. I would absolutely love to have one. Now that covers the lore part of today. Let's move on to other matters, because it appears that we have an empty bookshelf over here. What's all that about? Well, let me try some magic of my own. Simsala Magic Bim. Well, now that worked pretty amazingly. Look, what do we got back here, guys? We've got lore. Finally, I've got novels. Oh my God. My thanks specifically to Jesse and Rolo for going out and snagging me books. These two, Jesse went out to a local bookstore, like a used bookstore, and he found these for me and sent them out. Now these guys, we're gonna end up with more stories and more lore, and the crazy thing is this one, I've never seen this book before in my life. I don't even know what's in here. And that's amazing to me. I've read most of the novels. I thought I had read them all. So, my thanks to my newest lore seekers, lore finders, lore scorers, whatever you want to call yourselves. Excellent job, all right? And also, you know what? Have to take a moment here. One more moment for something else fun. Boom. All right, and I'm back, baby. I guess I should have put these books back on the shelf, but whatever. So, time to welcome Rolando Hidalgo. Such a pimp-ass name. All right, welcome to the Golden Lords of Purple. Thanks for joining up on my Patreon, my man. I will see you in the end scroll. And for anybody who hasn't checked it out yet, go check out the Chandelar playlist. It is popping off. It's a lot of fun. And I will see you guys laters.
Hey, Perp fam. It's your boy Lettuce. You know what it is. And together, we're the 6th color of magic.
And I'm history, baby.